Here's a sordid wee story from old Lochmaben. Sometime in the late 1700s, there lived in Lochmaben a God-fearing, bedridden wife of the local blacksmith by the name of Mary Neal. The poor, long-suffering woman had learned, perhaps with the help of the Bible, to put up with the scandalous fact that her husband allowed his lover to live in their house. Her main source of friendship and support was her neighbour, a widow who was just as deeply religious as Mary was. The widow would sit with her most days, exchanging chit-chat and reading the Bible with Mary. One day, the widow arrived to find Mary's beds cold, empty and unmade. Mary's day clothes sat beside it untouched. The widow went straight to Mary's husband for help to look for her friend, but he turned her away with anger and curses. So, instead, she roused the town to help her, and poor Mary was found floating in the loch. A visiting doctor from Dumfries performed a perfunctory autopsy and pronounced that Mary had drowned and that she had committed suicide. Now, here's one of the main points of this story that's really quite interesting. The Enlightenment was well underway among Scotland's upper and middle classes by then, but superstition still remained very strongly among the devoutly religious working classes. And while even the well-educated ministers, magistrates and doctors were all happy to ensure that Mary, as a suicide victim, was not buried on consecrated ground, this was a vanishing middle ground between people at the time. So, Mary was placed in a rough-cut coffin that was pulled by an ageing nag to a far-flung corner of the parish and buried under a flat stone with her name and date of death etched on it. The widow was thrown into a days-long state of shock at the tragedy, briefly abandoning her daily prayers. She found it very difficult to believe that Mary had committed such a great sin. When her initial bewilderment began to lift, though, she prayed reverently to God to help her understand what had happened. While she prayed, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning to look through tear-stained eyes, she gasped in surprise at the familiar figure that was approaching her, walking for once without the pain that had previously crippled her. "Mary, surely that cannot be you," the widow called out to the apparition before her. "Who else could it be?" the apparition replied. Shaken but convinced, the widow began to interrogate her dear friend about what had happened. Mary explained that she had not drowned, but she had been hit on the back of the head with a bottle instead. She told the widow that her body had been carried in a sack into the loch before being thrown into it. She told the widow that it had been her husband that had done the foul deed. The widow fainted at the revelation, and when she came to, Mary had gone. She was seized by the need to gain justice for Mary, so she took her story to the magistrate. He laughed her out of his office. Undaunted, she went next to the minister, who did not laugh, but did tell her to let the matter go and not speak of it again. So, at last she took her story to the folk of the town. They were soon so riled up by the tale that they demanded that Mary's body be exhumed. 2 doctors re-examined the body and discovered a wound hidden by a thick band of Mary's hair. Mary's husband was then arrested. People came from all around to see the trial. The story of Mary's ghost had spread from parish to parish, and now they packed the galleries of the court in Dumfries, expecting justice to be done. When the widow gave her testimony, the galleries were silent. It seemed utterly conclusive to them, but to the men of law in the courtroom, there was no way this second-hand testimony, taken from the word of a ghost, could be used as evidence. James Neal was remanded in custody until a material witness could be found. A man came forward to say that he had seen James carrying Mary's body to the loch, but when cross-examined, he admitted that he had not seen James's face. James Neal was acquitted. The folk of Lochmaben were not convinced of his innocence, so he was run out of town with his lover when he tried to return. Mary is buried now on consecrated ground, having been absolved of her crime of suicide. I'll leave it up to you to decide what is true about this sad wee tale, but do bear in mind that trauma can do odd things to a buddy's mind.